The crash of waves drowns out your cries as rough hands shove you toward the waiting ship. You are no longer a daughter, a sister, or a free soul. You are 16, torn from the coast of England, and everything you once knew is in flames behind you. The voices of the men around you are harsh and guttural, a language that twists into jeers and cruel laughter. Your wrists burn with the ropes cut into skin. Your lungs sting with smoke when the cottages set alight, and the screams of your kin echo like a nightmare you cannot wake from. The sea breeze carries no freedom, only the cold promise of exile. In that moment, you cease to be human. You are cargo, chained to a fate that offers no return. This was the Viking Age, stretching from the late 8th century into the 11th, an age often dressed in legend, daring voyages across uncharted seas, warriors who defied kings, shipwrights who reshaped the world of travel and conquest. We picture heroic sagas, fierce battles, and proud explorers pushing into the unknown. Yet beneath this shining surface lies a truth carved in blood and silence. For the Norsemen, raiding was not just a hunt for silver or glory. It was a system, a commerce, and a machine of suffering. Behind the stories of gods and heroes thrived a shadow empire built on bodies. For countless women, from the emerald coast of Ireland to forests of the Slavic East, the Viking Age was not a tale of freedom but of bondage. Abduction was their beginning, commodification their reality, and exploitation their destiny. What follows is not a myth. It is history, cold, brutal, and meticulously uncovered. The Viking raid is often remembered as an eruption of chaos, screaming warriors, fire, and steel cutting through defenseless villages. Yet beneath this violence was something colder, more deliberate. A system. Every longship that cut across the waves was not simply a band of adventurers, but the result of calculated investment. Chieftains and wealthy partners gathered resources, oak timber from dense forests, rivets forged in blacksmith fires, sailcloth woven by hands both free and enslaved. A longship was an enterprise, and like any enterprise, it demanded profit. The most reliable profit was not gold chalices or livestock. It was people. These ships, with shallow drafts and sleek hulls, could slice through coastal waters and then surge upriver, bypassing strongholds to strike deep inland. Entire communities thought safe, living far from the shore, awoke to the nightmare of dragon-prowed vessels gliding silently onto riverbanks. Their homes were not targets of random cruelty, but calculated strikes. The evidence lies in chronicles penned by terrified monks. The Irish annals of Ulster record again and again the same grim phrase: a great host of women carried into captivity. These were not anomalies. They were the business plan. To be taken was to be unmade. A daughter became nothing but property. A wife was reduced to an entry on someone else's ledger. The Old Norse word rl, meaning slave, carried the same connotation as livestock in law codes. They were referred to in neuter form, objects, not people. To own a thrall was to own wealth, as tangible as cattle. To be one was to vanish from humanity itself. The journey into bondage began with binding ropes, then days or weeks of marching to the waiting ships, packed tightly into open vessels, exposed to cold spray, starving, beaten, terrified. The captives endured voyages that were trials in themselves. Disease spreads in the damp conditions. The weak or sick collapsed and were discarded like spoiled goods. For those who survived, worse awaited. Dublin, renamed Dublin by the Norse, rose as one of the largest slave markets in Western Europe. It was no longer just a settlement, but a clearinghouse for human lives. Here, women captured from Irish villages, Scottish Isles, and English coasts were sold like wares. From Dublin, they were shipped outward, west to Iceland, north to Norway, east into the river systems that connected Scandinavia to the heart of Eurasia. And those river routes were arteries of misery. The Volga, the Dnieper, roads of water carrying chained people from their homelands into foreign markets. Arab geographers described the Rus, Norse traders of the East, as slavers above all. They seized the Sakalaba, Slavic peoples, in staggering numbers, selling them in Bulgar, in Khazaria, in the dazzling markets of Constantinople, and most lucratively of all, in Baghdad. The archaeological record speaks with chilling clarity. Hoards of Islamic silver coins, unearthed in Sweden, prove the connection. Tens of thousands of dirhams flowed northward. Each coin was silent testimony to a body sold, a life broken, a woman torn from her kin. Slavery was not incidental. It was the economic lifeblood of Viking expansion. Imagine the arrival at one of these markets. The women, already stripped of kinship and identity, now stripped of even dignity. They were displayed as merchandise. Buyers examined their bodies with the same appraising I use for cattle. The 10th century Arab diplomat Ahmad ibn Fadlan described such a scene with unflinching detail. He saw the traders of the Rus line their captives along a riverbank. Prospective buyers did not simply ask questions. They watched as a trader publicly used a girl, a grotesque demonstration of ownership and value. Her suffering was not hidden. It was part of the sale. This was the erasure humanity humanity turned into ritual. The body of a woman became a billboard for commerce. Once purchased, her fate diverged only in degree. For most, it meant relentless toil. The thrall woman was the engine of the longhouse. She ground grain into flour until her hands bled, carried water in the freezing dawn, cooked, brewed, cleaned, and spun into cloth that became currency itself. Archaeological analysis of bones shows women deformed by labor, malnourished and stunted by unending work. Others were taken for more intimate exploitation. The concubine, the frilla, was not a mistress in the modern sense. She was an enslaved woman pressed into a household as a sexual possession. Sagas written centuries later mention them casually, as if they were as natural a part of the household as cattle or tools. An Irish princess appears in the Laxdela saga, bought, silenced, and used as a concubine. Her children were labeled freeborn, born of a concubine, children whose status depended entirely on the whims of their father. He might free them, or he might condemn them to the same chains that bound their mother. Modern science has peeled back the myth. Genetic studies in Iceland reveal the truth. While most of the island's male ancestors were Scandinavian, the majority of its female ancestors were Gaelic, not settlers, not partners, captives. The DNA of the enslaved became the foundation of a nation. Even highborn captives were not spared exploitation, though their value sometimes lay in ransom. Queens, noble women, even nuns were held as bargaining chips, leveraged for silver, land, or alliances. Their survival depended not on mercy, but on profit. Yet for some, the end came in rituals more horrifying still. Slavery in the Viking Age was not only economic, it was spiritual, woven into rites of death and power. When a chieftain died, the question arose, who would accompany him? Sometimes the answer was a thrall. Ibn Fadlan's infamous account of a chieftain's ship burial along the Volga is among the most chilling records in history. A slave girl was chosen to volunteer. Over 10 days, she was paraded, plied with drink, passed from man to man under the pretense of ritual. Each told her to greet her lord in the next life. On the final day, she was led to the ship. The dead man lay in state. She lay beside him. A rope was looped around her neck, pulled tight while the executioner, an old woman called the Angel of Death, stabbed her repeatedly. Her cries were drowned out by warriors hammering their shields. The ship was set ablaze, carrying both lord and slave into eternity. This was not a myth. Archaeological finds echo Ibn Fadlan's words. Graves with multiple bodies, including servants and slaves, suggest ritual killing to accompany the powerful into the afterlife. In the famous Osberg burial, one high-status woman lay beside another whose body bore signs of hardship, possibly a thrall's sacrifice to her mistress. Imagine the terror this inspired. For enslaved women, life itself offered no promise of peace. Death could be as violent and degrading as bondage, and yet within Norse society, this was not a scandal. It was normalized. The sagas speak of slaves as naturally expendable. A wealthy man's prestige was measured not just in land, but in the number of thralls he commanded. The casual brutality was accepted, unchallenged, ingrained in culture. For the overwhelming majority, slavery was a life sentence. Children inherited the chains of their mothers. Families were erased across generations, their labor and bodies woven into prosperity of their masters. Occasionally, a thrall might be freed. Manumission, the gift of freedom, was rare, a gesture sometimes made by a dying master or in recognition of lifelong service. Runestone commemorate a few such cases, like Toki the blacksmith, freed and given gold by his lord. Yet, these are exceptions remembered precisely because they were so uncommon. Christianity, spreading across Scandinavia in the 10th and 11th centuries, shifted but did not end slavery. Officially, Christians were not to enslave fellow Christians. In practice, this simply redirected Viking slavers to new victims, the still pagan Slavic and Baltic peoples. The institution endured, transforming slowly into the serfdom of medieval Europe. But in the Viking Age, slavery was not marginal. It was central. The wealth of chieftains, the voyages to Iceland and Greenland, even the daring leap to Vinland in North America, all were financed, sustained, and made possible through human exploitation. Behind every saga of warriors and explorers stands the unseen majority, the women dragged from their burning villages, their voices silenced, their names forgotten. Their labor spun the cloth that became currency. Their bodies bore children who reshaped nations. Their lives built the foundation of Norse expansion. Today, the romantic image of the Viking, fearless seafarer, master shipbuilder, still dominates popular memory. But the truth is darker. These achievements were stained with suffering. Every gleaming hoard of silver carried echoes of chains. Every hall filled with feasting was built on broken backs. Every voyage of discovery was shadowed by cries of the enslaved. To understand the Viking Age fully, we must strip away the myth. We must see not only the heroes, but the captives, not only the ships, but the human cargo, not only only the sagas, but the silenced, because history is not only the story of the conquerors, it is also the story of those they conquered. And in the Viking Age, that story was written most brutally in the lives of women, taken, sold, used, and forgotten. We can marvel at the craftsmanship of Viking ships, but we must also hear the cries of those forced aboard as unwilling cargo. We can honor the sagas as extraordinary literature, but we must also confront the silences between the lines, the unspoken suffering of women whose names were erased. The story of Viking slavery is not an isolated cruelty of the distant past. It is a window into the mechanics of dehumanization, the way entire societies can normalize the idea that some lives matter less. It shows us how easily violence can be justified when profit and power demand it. The truth is written everywhere, etched into the chronicles of monks, preserved in the laws that define people as property, confirmed by genetic studies, and unearthed in the graves where the enslaved lay beside their masters. The heroic image of fearless Norsemen roaming free across the seas is inseparable from the unfreedom of those they bound in chains. The true legacy of the Viking Age is not only in adventure and conquest, it is also in the silent endurance of women who lived, labored, and died as its hidden foundation.